Hello and welcome to this edition of the Startup Central. I'm Nayantara Rai, working from home. This is the only show of its kind dedicated, of course, to startups, technology, innovation, disruption. Basically, if it falls under the ambit of the new economy, it's here every weekday at 6 p.m. right here on ET Now. Ladies and gentlemen, like all the stakeholders we feature from the community on the show, Team Startup Central thrives on constructive feedback. Don't hold back. Keep writing into us. Tell us how we can improve the show, how we should be doing things differently, what you'd like to see as a part of the show. We don't mind lapping up in compliments. You can send us those as well. Our email address right on top. I'm also on Twitter. Let's begin the show with some news that's coming in that the Narendra Modi government wants to set up a regulator for non-personal data. What is non-personal data? How is it going to impact you? How is it going to impact all of the apps that you have on your smartphone, on your iPad? How will it change things on ground? I'm going to discuss that with noted technology lawyer Vinay Kesri. Hi Vinay, good evening. Thank you so much for being a part of Startup Central. I want to first begin by asking you, what is non-personal data? Explain that to our viewers.
And thank you for having me. That's actually a very good question. And to be very honest, there isn't a very clear answer to this. As you know, personal data is any data that is personally identifiable. Anything that contains personal details such as names, your phone number, location, anything that relates to you and your identity as a natural person. Now, non-personal data, as is obvious from the term, is anything that doesn't fall within that bucket. Now, that by nature means that it is a very expansive term. It doesn't have a broadly accepted meaning, but basically means anything that isn't personal data. So this could be aggregated traffic information. This could be weather data. This could be buying patterns. It could also, depending on who you ask, include things like certain types of inferred data from data that's inferred from data sets that may also contain personal data. It could also include anonymized data and so on. So it's a very wide uh, you know topic essentially.
Okay, so now let me come to asking you that, we still don't really have a regulator as yet in place for our personal data. The government's already looking at non-personal data. Do we need a regulator for this? Is there such a regulator in other domiciles?
So no, there isn't a regulator for this specifically in any other country that I'm aware of. But I think we should also, I'd like to take a step back and say that, the reports we're hearing right now are based on a draft report of the committee. So we don't know for certain whether, this is in fact going to be the recommendation of the committee. And it's also unclear if what the committee is saying is that there needs to be a separate regulator, or whether the data protection authority, which will eventually be set up when the personal data protection bill is passed, hopefully sometime later this year, or perhaps sometime next year. It's unclear if that regulator, the DPA, could also deal with non-personal data. That's unclear. But I think that it's important to recognize that this is new territory for the entire world. The concept of specifically regulating non-personal data is quite new, and it's definitely something that it's an area where we should tread carefully. We also have to look at where this came from, right? What are the concerns that led to this committee being set up? Now, we hear all of these phrases about data being the new oil and so on. So there's this general sense that data is really important, right? And people understand that personal data has implications relating to individuals and their privacy and so on. But there's also the question of, what about other data? Should data that's not personal data, whose domain is it? Is it completely the domain of the corporations that collect these data sets and aggregate them and spend quite a bit of effort and time and money in kind of putting together those data sets, should it belong only to them? Are they the only ones who should derive economic benefit from this? Or is there a larger public interest to be served by treating certain types of data sets, particularly aggregated data sets relating to entire countries, communities, and so on? Is there a public interest in making this type of data more widely available to people and
No, but Vinay, if I could come in there. Vinay, let me come in there. What I also want to ask you is that, okay, I take your point on why it's crucial, what can be done with it. Can you tell me right now what happens with this data? If we do have a regulator, how can it possibly be regulated? Because you can literally have non-personal data, meaning as weather data, traffic data. It could be data that you and I spoke on the cell phone, but you just make that anonymous, but that data also exists. It's massive, and this is also data, whether right or wrong, is used by companies for whether it is targeted marketing or indirect marketing. So what can a regulator do?
So again, a good question with no very clear answers. To begin with, one approach, which is kind of alluded to in the report, is to start off by saying, hey, let's at least try to understand who are the large entities who are dealing in non-personal data. What they seem to be terming data exchanges. So if you deal in data beyond a certain threshold, I'm not sure how that threshold will be defined, but if you deal in data above a certain threshold, you have to register as a data exchange in India. That could be one possible way to begin. But what happens after you're regulated and take a license or whatever else it is that is contemplated is really a very interesting question. Now there are people have suggested various different ways of looking at this. One is to say that, hey, let's go out and identify data sets, that are actually extremely important, from a national perspective, from a community perspective, and so on. And let's try to make that kind of data openly available to everyone, to governments, to perhaps even other corporations, because this could be a way of making sure that specific companies don't build large moats of data. Now, the problem with this kind of approach is, firstly, how do you identify which of these data sets are really important? And two, in some ways, this can be seen as effectively an expropriation of private property, because while whether data is property or not is a very interesting legal and philosophical question, the fact is that people have certain proprietary rights over these data sets. And if you are taking that away from them and making dilute the economic of that data
Okay,
set.
right. I take your point. Okay. Thanks a lot, Vinay, for joining us on this edition of Startup Central. So that's the Indian government wanting a regulator for non-personal data. Now you know why, what it means for all the apps that you have on your smartphones. Thanks a lot, Vinay.